Welcome, councillors and members of our public gallery to this, our December meeting and our last meeting for this year of 2018. I'll start with our opening prayer. We give thanks for the contribution by pioneers, early settlers, and for those who fought in the various wars for the fabric of Tenterfield community we have today. May the words of our mouths and the meditation of our hearts be accepted in thy sight, O Lord. Amen. The acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge traditional custodians of this land they are meeting on today. I would also like to pay respect to elders both past and present of the Juckabal, Kamilaroi and Bundjalung nations and extend that respect to other Aboriginal people present. Councillors are all in attendance, so there is no apologies. Disclosures and declarations of interest. We have disclosures and declarations of interest, and they're all for the same item, councillors, for COM 26/18 from Councillor Bronwyn Petrie, Councillor Tom Peters, Councillor Peter Petty, Councillor Michael Petrie, Councillor Greg Sawyer. And they're all non-pecuniary and less than significant, so all the councillors will be staying in to partake in that business. Confirmation of previous minutes, councillors. We move to our hard copy of our agenda. It's on starts with page 8. It's item MIN 5/18. Would someone who was in attendance at our last meeting like to move and second that is approved as a true and correct record? Councillor Sawyer, thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Tom Peters, thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. Oh, sorry, no. Just bear with me, councillors. Councillors, we have a late addendum item, and it is in the tabling of documents. Someone would like to move in this item COM 27/18 to do with the adoption of the War Memorial Bars Pool Management Plan. Can I have a move and a second to adopt that late item? Councillor Gary Very, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Don Forbes, and I thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. Councillor, sorry. This one. Yep. Councillors, with respect, are we happy to do with the as we move through our point of business? I'd like that we'll have our community public access session with our presenters, and with the approval of the council that we move item COM 26/18. It's appropriate that item to do with the petitions is tabled, and then we'll deal with those two items 26/18 and item ENV 26/18. So we deal with those two items straight after public access. Are we happy with that? Can I have a move in a second along those lines, please? Councillor Don Forbes, thank you. Second by Councillor Greg Sawyer, thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, councillors, we move on to the first of our, and I do need to note, councillors, 10:30, we have an Australian citizen, 10:15, thank you, Nolene. We have Australian citizenship ceremony. We will be stopping right on that time, so no matter where we are. Okay, in our public access session, councillors, we have a presenter, Ms Danielle Kelly, with item COM 27/18, adoption of Tenterfield War Memorial Bars Pool Management Plan. Danielle, could you welcome the councillors? Please stand and welcome a visitor to our chamber, please. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, councillors. Danielle, you have 5 minutes for your presentation. I will, when we get to 4 minutes, I will tell you 1 minute.
Testing, beautiful. Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Yep, and Ms. Kelly, please. I will make it quite clear that with the acceptance of people in a public access session, it needs to be to something that's in our business paper. So obviously this is to do with the addendum of the management of our pool. So that's what your presentation is about. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you for the opportunity. So I'd just like to start off with the letter. So one, my concern is obviously diving into the pool. This is not diving as in running up and diving. It's just standing at the bluff, dive in, and it's deep water. Our pool is 3 metres deep, which is very unusual and quite unique. Armadale Pool is 1.8 metres deep, and they're allowed to dive. Stanthorpe Pool is 2 metres deep, and they are allowed to dive. So I'm a bit concerned about the grouping of standing diving along with things like bombing and backflips. Standing to dive into the water is totally different to actually running and doing a dive. It's different than doing a backflip or a bomb. So I'm concerned with, perhaps it's regarding insurance. I've contacted Marsh Insurance, and I've also contacted IME Insurance, which Ausswim are insured with. You can actually talk to different insurers, and you can actually find out, you can break those two apart because it's so different. So again, our water is deep water. I'm not saying to dive into the shallow water uninstructed. I'm saying diving into our deep pool. Okay, so I'm just a bit concerned too that is the insurance, is it inadequate for our community, or does the company that operates the pool, Just Fitness and whatever, do they have adequate insurance, or can they get adequate insurance? And if they can't, why? Number 4, a bit concerned about the statistics in that report regarding the 5:30. I, along with other family members, were there from December through to January till 6:30. I'm allowed to mention names, so Kerry Swain and her family were there constantly, and also Beck Eben and her family. So you'd know Beck and Adrian from the chemist and around town. They've got 4 children. So about the statistics and, where are they from? If you're not part of swimming club, so I've paid my $375 to go to the pool. I can't afford swimming club. I work, but I'm a solo mum. So basically now, because my kids, and I can't afford the $5 twice a week, so now my children, roughly 12 years of age, cannot dive in. They've been swimming since they're 2. So at our local pool, we can't even dive in and go for a swim. So I can't stand again and just dive into the water and do my freestyle, which it's ludicrous, to be honest. But anyway, so the pools I've contacted, which is probably 5 pools in this direct area. I understand one was from Stanthorpe, so it may fall under different rules. They are allowed to dive into deep water, not shallow water, deep. This is 3 metres, and it's actually about 4 metres depth and 3 metres deep. So I just to get that concept. So this is probably, what's that, 2? Is that 3 metres? That's a big pool of water to be diving in. So I'm just a bit concerned that the risk assessment, may have been based on some false data. If you're given maybe some incorrect data, I can understand, but this is a total different ballgame. And I think as Tenterfield, we could use this as a unique opportunity, because it's a different pool compared to other pools, that, it would bring people in instead of having to drive to Stanthorpe, which is expensive, and drive away.
1 minute, Mrs. Kelly.
So, thank you. So, in closing, I implore you to reconsider the standing dive for an uninstructed person that doesn't have the qualifications. I've had 43 years at that pool. My children have had 10 years at that pool. Anyway, that's it in closing. So thank you so much for the time, and I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. We'll take your comments on board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, councillors, we move on to our next public access session with our attendees with the item ENV 26/18, development application number 2018.087, funeral home and mortuary, 60 Polwarth Street, Tenterfield. We have 4 speakers. We have 2 speaking for the application and 2 against, which is standard, which we do when we come to items like this, councillors. So our first speaker is Mr. Glenn Curry. Glenn, would you like to come forward? And councillors, would you please stand and welcome Glenn? Welcome. Thank you, councillors. Welcome, Glenn and Troy and your lovely wives. And Glenn, as with all our speakers, you have 5 minutes, and I will give you a 1 minute warning.
Need to turn it on the side.
Sorry, Darlene?
Just turn it on the side.
That's right. Just apologise in advance, councillors, for the pace of delivery, but to get through the volume that we need to today, it has to be a little bit quick.
All good.
Inverell Casino, Stanthorpe and Warwick, all new funeral homes with chapels. Councillors, why should Tenterfield be any different? Good morning, Mayor Petty, councillors, Chief Executive Dodds, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to address you this morning on the development application for a new funeral home chapel that Tenterfield Family Funerals lodged earlier this year, and we look forward to a decision being made here today. Robin, Troy, Leash and I are the families behind Tenterfield Family Funerals and stand before you today driven by our passion to provide Tenterfield with a first-class facility that honours our commitment to raise the standards of funeral care. We consider ourselves not as a business, but as a family genuinely caring for our other families in difficult times. Councillors, what has been so disappointing about this process is the complete disregard by some community members for truth and factual information. Councillors, a lot of time here today does not allow me to address all the misinformation and, quite frankly, the fanciful and offensive assertions that have been put to and before you. I believe that Council Senior Planner has addressed all these concerns without issue or exception. I'll address the two main points that were raised time and again in the objections submitted. The continual mention of a crematorium and the lies regarding us having a cremator and it already being located in my personal shed are purely a poor effort to frighten others. To address this once and for all, we provided to Council a statutory declaration declaring that we do not have plans for a crematorium and do not hold such equipment. Regarding the loss in property values, the opinion provided by a real estate agent as to the detrimental effect a funeral home may have on property values in the area is quoted with no proof or substantiation. How many homes has this agent sold beside a funeral home? Rather than providing factual and evidence-based answer, this agent has happily inflamed the situation and been silly enough to put a figure on it. This is why when seeking finance, evaluation is required and not the opinion of an agent. One submission has claimed investment of $6 million in George Street between Riley and Cowper. This is only exaggerated by 1.5 million. But don't let the facts get in the way. As you're aware, councillors, we provide the opinions of 3 registered valuers. All operate in the Tenterfield area. As to their opinions and the proposed development that will have on the surrounding properties, I quote parts of that to you. Taylor Byrne of Inverell, considering the current use of as a 7-day-a-week approved restaurant, cafe and tourist attraction, I do not believe there will be an increased impact to the surrounding houses, if not a decreased impact. Considering the property's proximity to the highway and the noise pollution caused by this, it could be assumed that a purchaser in this location would not be deterred by the funeral home, as the traffic noise would have a greater effect upon marketability over and above that of the existence of a funeral home. Cleanliness valuation services. Based on these inquiries, I cannot find any firm evidence surrounding properties will be financially disadvantaged and so stop the development or have cause for compensation for disturbance or any other reason. East Point valuations of Lismore. I've viewed the plans of the proposed development, which includes alterations and additions to the existing building and is generally in keeping with the current facade, thereby minimising an overall visual impact to the site. With less traffic converging on the site, overall, I would consider there to be no perceived detrimental factors that would warrant a reduction in land values as a result of the proposed development on site. To be quite blunt, in my 13 years professional experience as a property valuer, I'm yet to witness a negative impact on surrounding property values as a result of a premise being converted to a funeral home chapel. Evidence indicates land values surrounding a funeral home chapel generally rise and fall in line with the current property market of the time. In summary, in my professional opinion, I can see no potential negative impact on the land property values in the surrounding area of the proposed funeral home and chapel on the corner of Polwarth and Cowper Streets in Tenterfield. Council, all evidence-based opinions and a conclusive rebuttal to the emotive claims made by this real estate agent. With a site area of in excess of 5,000 square metres, the proposed development would fit comfortably without encroaching on any neighbour or thoroughfare. With 15 other businesses identified within 750 metres, along with a huge reduction in the use of the facility, which is currently approved to operate for 104 late nights per year. The proposed development will not alter or inhibit the makeup of the area. Councillors, following are 14 examples of funeral homes and chapels that we have visited, and they happily coexist within their surrounding neighbourhood. Glen Innes, Casino, Grafton, Maclean, Yamba, Tamworth, Singleton, Picton, Nowra, which you can see has got the school across the road, Stanthorpe, Warwick, which you can see there in the top right, the newly constructed playground directly across the road, Toowoomba, existing, new, and the commencement of a new housing development in the immediate area, Gatton, and Caloundra, which you can see the Caloundra Christian College neighbours the funeral home and chapel.
1 minute, Mr. Curry.
Councillors, like the senior planner, we recognise that all legitimate concerns should be addressed, but see no reason why this proposed development and significant investment in Tenterfield should not be approved. We were contacted last night by a proprietor of 32 funeral homes in Victoria, who unfortunately, we didn't get this till last night, has every one of those in a residential area and was happy to provide evidence to that basis. So that's 32 that he owns in residential areas. Again, councillors, I think your senior planner has more than addressed the concerns, and we're happy with that they have been addressed correctly and happy to abide by the conditions that have been applied. We thank you very much for your time today.
I thank you for your presentation, Mr. Curry. Thank you. Councillors, we move on now to our next presenter, Bernadette Dunnett. Bernadette, if you'd like to come forward, please. Councillors, please stand and welcome Mrs. Dunnett to the chamber. Welcome, Mrs. Dunnett, and once again, 5 minutes, and I will give you a 1 minute warning.
Thank you.
Okay?
Good morning, Mayor Petty, councillors and members of the public. My name is Bernadette Dunnett and I'm speaking on behalf of my mother, Eleanor Meredith, of Airlie Park, Cowper Street. Airlie Park was built in the 1880s and has been in our family since 1965. Up until the mid-1990s, the property stretched from Cowper Street to Nass Street. Due to the foresight of Thomas Meredith, the environment of our home, Millrace and Millbrook Park has been enhanced by the trees he planted 50 years ago. It is this environment that we wish to protect. In one of the supporters' submissions, they consider, and I quote, "It is in a very inconspicuous part of town." How can a development that is built not more than a kilometre from the Welcome to Tenterfield sign be in an inconspicuous part of town, as it is situated on the New England Highway? The funeral home will, with the speed camera and the nursing home, be one of the first things to greet travellers. If the existing pole and pylon sign is used for advertising, it will do nothing to help blend the development within the surrounding area. The sign will be more like visual pollution. It is deeply concerning that few potential issues with traffic and access have been identified or addressed in either the original or amended submission. Tenterfield is known for its large funerals. 80 mourners could mean the possibility of 40+ cars, which exceeds the development's allocated car spaces. The area in and around Polwarth Street is not suitable for off-street parking. The difference between Crazy Maze traffic and the proposed development is restaurant traffic arrived and left at staggered intervals. Funeral attendees and cortege generally arrive and leave simultaneously. Access to Polwarth Street is off the New England Highway. This entrance is near a hazardous bend, which has seen many accidents. It is a narrow, no-through road with no line markings or turning facilities, frequently used by pedestrians. Overflow parking could block our entry gates, as well as impede access for emergency vehicles to Millrace. The developers agreed that the development is out of character with the area, but did not really give details on how they would mitigate or reduce such impacts, except to plant some shielding trees. The amenity of the area previously produced a relaxed and happy atmosphere. Happy people tend to make one feel better. A funeral home will not have that same effect, even though it is a celebration of life. Knowing there is a mortuary near one's home may have an impact on residents' mental health. No one wants a constant reminder of their own mortality, which is what will happen every time we enter and exit our property. At the November 7 meeting with developers and council, the possibility of a crematorium being built on the site was addressed. We realise this requires a separate DA, but the fact that this idea was not negated does allow for ongoing mental anxiety for residents, as there is enough room on and near the site for this to happen. We believe it will have a negative impact on real estate values. Comparison to the Ballina Funeral Home, which was used as a supporting document, we believe is flawed. That developer had their first submission in River Street, Ballina denied on the grounds of traffic impact. Their second site in Kalinga Street was approved on the old McDonald's site. This site already had approved traffic access, generating far more traffic than a funeral home. It is also important to note the quoted Ballina Funeral Home does not have a mortuary. Therefore, comparing that development to this is like comparing apples to oranges. As of 2018, according to New South Wales Globe, none of the houses facing the Ballina Funeral Home have been sold. It is then difficult to say with any certainty that the funeral home has had any impact on their resale worth. The developer's site is on a higher elevation and the view from our back garden is a pleasant natural view. The view of the development goes ahead will now be of the funeral home and mortuary. The plans indicate that the existing pines will be removed and replaced with mop-top robinia to fit in with the existing streetscape. That streetscape is nearly a kilometre away and has no bearing on Cowper Street. These trees are totally unsuitable as shielding trees as they are deciduous and they also sucker.
1 minute, Mrs. Donnet.
In fact, they are very ugly trees in winter and will do nothing to shield the development. More likely, it will be more noticeable. The addition of stormwater sumps being piped out to the street could potentially increase the velocity of water heading towards our property during heavy rains. The guttering system mentioned in Polworth Street is, after all, only a ditch. There is potential for water runoff to enter our property. We believe that this development is not a good fit for residential area. We're not against family funerals at all. It's just within our residential area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your presentation. Councillor, before I call on the next speaker, I will remind to councillors with the reference from Mrs. Dunnett to the crematorium, and it's been presented here in the first presentation that we are dealing with an application today for a funeral home and mortuary. So we need to be aware of that, and there's no mention of a crematorium and the evidence that was provided to us, so we need to take that on board. So I just want to make that clear. I will ask Mr. Ben Brown, will be our next speaker, to come forward. And councillors, would you please stand and welcome Mr. Brown to our chamber. Thank you, councillors. Welcome, Mr. Brown, and as with the other speakers, you have 5 minutes and I will give you a 1 minute warning.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, councillors, ladies and gentlemen, to those who do not know, I am Ben Brown and I live at 43 George Street, which is about roughly 300 metres from the proposed funeral home. I've lived in Tenterfield for over 30 years and I love the town and I love the people. When I first came to town, I owned and operated the commercial hotel, and in more recent times, I have managed the Tenterfield Bowling Club for 15 years, and I believe that the town needs a vibrant business community to grow and to create local employment for our youth and citizens. When a proposal such as this application comes along, there is always controversy, and it is easy to say nothing. But is that the right thing for me to do if you do have a view on the matter? In coming along today, I am aware that some of my neighbours and friends do not agree with the proposal and me. I respect their views and I hope that they respect mine and that we remain on good terms. Since living in Tenterfield, I've seen a number of business opportunities lost here, and I feel that if we are to prosper, we have to support future business growth. The applicants in this matter the Curry and Hillier families are all business families of long standing in motor, real estate, farming and funeral interests, and they have created prosperity and employment in our town and will continue to do so if given the chance. From my impressions of the application and plans attached, I think that this business will be unobtrusive and tastefully presented and well run and will not create noise or undue attention. I have seen many other funeral homes located in the residential and business areas of similar towns to Tenterfield, and I have never ever heard of any problems. I must declare that 2.5 years ago, Tenterfield Family Funerals conducted my wife's funeral, and I was most impressed with the caring and thorough way it was handled. I'm sure that if the application is approved, this business will operate from this site in a dignified manner and that there will be minimal effect on residents in the area. In closing, I would ask those people objecting to the application if they would still object if this application was to change the existing building into a church of religion. Bear in mind that a church would also have services, funerals, and funeral corteges. I personally have no objection to this application. Thank you.
Councillors, I will invite Mr Alan Williams. Alan is our last speaker to do with our community access session. And once again, please stand and welcome Mr Williams to our chamber. Thank you, councillors. Welcome, Mr Williams, and as with the other speakers, you have 5 minutes, and I will give you a warning at 1 minute.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr Mayor and councillors. My name is Alan Williams and I live at 47 George Street. I wish to speak against the DA 2018.087. I speak on behalf of myself and other residents surrounding the proposed establishment of the funeral parlour and mortuary in Polwarth Street. From information we have circulated to councillors recently, you will understand we firmly believe that there are substantial legal, environmental and ethical reasons why this DA should not be approved. At the very least, it should not be approved without further proper assessment and consultation. I believe it will have an adverse effect on neighbours' property values and quality of life, and no amount of denials or cherry-picked supporting statements will stop this from being the case. This fact alone is enough for you to say no. Some residences back directly onto the and above this site and will be impacted by the noise of vehicle movements and pedestrians coming to and from the car park, and the noise that they generate in their daily routine may be an annoyance to mourners. Court hearings in Australia have ruled that the psychological effect of such a development on neighbours is real, and the loss in monetary value is real, whatever the amount. The developers and council staff seem to rely on the fact that access to the site will be from Polwarth Street and thus avoid assessing the issue of the effect on highway traffic and safety. 100% of traffic entering and leaving the site must use the one intersection of Polwarth Street and the National Highway. Some may be only occasional drivers, some mournfully distracted, some may not wish to follow the procession, and some may be impatient at waiting for a suitable break in the highway traffic. And that there may be a combination of these elements occurring simultaneously. Surprise congestion at this location could cause a backup effect on the highway traffic and potential accidents. The assessment requirement in the LEP for a risk analysis regarding access to the highway is in place to ensure the safety of the public and should not be brushed aside on a technicality. Risk to life and limb is a real concern and should be thoroughly examined before a decision is made. The fact that funeral parlours exist in residential areas elsewhere does not disprove a negative impact on those communities. Just recently, an application for such a development in Brisbane South was knocked back because the people didn't want it there. And the proponents of this development wield a lot of power and influence in and over our community. And it is not unrealistic to think that some people supplying supporting arguments or including inclined to vote in favour of this proposal are feeling pressure from that influence. Many people expressed their views that this was an inappropriate location for a development, but were not prepared to sign a petition as it would hurt their business. Many residents of Millrace have expressed their opposition to this proposal and signed the petition. We are not against the development of these facilities for Tenterfield, and we are not against the proponents, but we are against the currently chosen location for this development. In addition to the 49 signatures that were submitted to the council before, there have been another 89 more recently collected, plus one who failed to sign, and as of this morning, 3 more out the front of the building before when we're waiting to come in. So councillors, you have taken an oath to act without fear or favour and make decisions which protect the integrity and well-being of our community. I urge you to lift up your heads and vote with truth and equity. The people are depending on you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Councillors, we move on with our agenda, and we've approved to move these 2 items forward. The first one is on page 35 of your hard copy. It's item COM 26/18 to do with submissions of petition development application number 2018-07 funeral home mortuary 60 Polwarth Street, Tenterfield. Councillors, just to make everybody clear, with the petitions that are tabled, these are the ones that came and were in the time frame. The signatures and petitions, the added on, which we're going to note anyway, that Mr. Williams referred to, they didn't get here on time, so that's why they're not published. So be aware of that. But the ones that did, that's why they're in here, the close of the business paper. And I think the people with the petition were aware of that, but I just wanted to make that clear. Okay, so we'll deal with this item. Can I have a move and a second to deal with this item, please? Councillor Bronwyn Petrie, thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Michael Petrie, and I thank you. And I'll hand over to our Chief Corporate Officer, Kylie Smith, to present this item. Thank you, Kylie.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. This report's reasonably self-explanatory to actually authorise or to receipt the petition that has been received and submitted by Mr Mark Ubbott of 53 George Street. And there's a recommendation there that Council notes the tabling of a petition requesting that the Council refuses approval for development application 2018.087 funeral home and mortuary at 60 Polwarth Street, Tenterfield, and that Council consider the petitioner's requests as part of the Council's deliberations and decision process when considering all other public submissions for development application 2018.87 funeral home and mortuary at 60 Polwarth Street, Tenterfield.
Thank you, Kylie. Councillors, any questions, comment to Kylie to do with the report? No? The report said, councillors, that Council note the tabling of the petition. All in favour? Against? Councillor Brian Murray, you're voting. I'll go again. We're voting on this item. It's to do with the tabling of the petition. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Councillors, we move on to page 56 in your hard copy. It's item ENV 26/18 for development application number 2018.087 funeral home and mortuary 60 Polwarth Street, Tenterfield. Can I have a move and a second to deal with this item, please? Councillor Brian Murray, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Greg Sawyer, and I thank you. And once again, I'll hand over to our Chief Corporate Officer, Kylie Smith, to present, and to May as a Senior Town Planner. And welcome to May, as always. Kylie.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. So in summary, we've got the development application 2018.087 for a funeral home and mortuary presented to council. As an officer's recommendation there that council approve the development application for a funeral home and mortuary at 60 Polwarth Street, Twentyfield, subject to the conditions contained in the attachment 2 booklet, and notify those persons who made submissions of council's decision.
Thank you, Kylie. Councillors, questions, comment to Kylie to deal with the report? Silence on the line. No questions to our officer? Or to Tamay? Tamay, did you want to comment to do anything to do with the report? No? Thank you. Okay, if there's no questions to do with the report, councillors. I'm sorry, Councillor Very.
I've got a comment.
Yeah, I'll accept the comment, councillor.
Tenterfield has evolved over a long period of time through community consensus and shared understanding of how the town should be. Without formal zones of development, there is an obvious organisation of civic, business and industrial residential areas that has produced the attractive functional town with a strong sense of heritage that we enjoy today. I believe that council cannot justify the disturbance of this community developed sense of order by consenting to the development of a funeral business so obviously out of character with the town in a distinctly residential area. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, councillors, and they're your comments, Councillor Very. Councillors, because we have no question, no comment, I'm sorry, Councillor Forbes, by all means. Question to do with the report, councillor, or?
No, that's a comment.
Okay, I'll accept that. Microphone, councillor, please.
Yes, it's a comment. I have concerns in relation to valuation documentation assessed as part of the proposal. My personal belief is that this development will have a detrimental impact on property values in the area. Sure. Thank you.
Noted, councillor.
Thank you.
Did you have a question? Well, the questions to the report. The report's in front of us, councillor. So the report's been presented by a chief corporate officer and our town planners here. If councillors had any questions to do with the report, they must be distinct and to the report. I was happy to have accepted 2 comments, and that's obviously 2 councillors' opinions. So I've got to be very careful. I'd be looking for someone, if I take them as obviously as a negative, I'd be looking for 2 positives now, if you want to comment, if that's what's going to be. Councillor Tom Peters, and I apologise, Councillor Bronwyn Petrie, because if you haven't indicated you did want to speak, I've gone to Councillor Peters. Councillor Peters, microphone, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment. As far as I could see, the RMS doesn't have any problems with traffic entering and leaving the funeral home.
And that's noted in the report, councillor.
Thank you.
Yep. I'll go to Councillor Bob Rogan. I'll come back to you, Councillor Petrie, and then I'll go to you, Councillor Brian Murray. Councillor Bob.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is a comment also, if that's allowed.
I'll allow it, councillor.
Yeah, thank you. The development as proposed, I believe wouldn't be in the public interest, not the total public interest of the town, for the reasons that Councillor Very commented on. The residents believe that the social impact upon them would be substantial, and particularly those in close proximity. So as it would instigate a change in their lifestyle behaviours. The residents have told me that they would feel obligated to modify their activities by reducing noise, particularly from things like children's normal play, parties and the like, and normal family behaviour on weekends, etc. So concern has also been expressed that any such noise that is generated may affect the mourners and may be seen as a lack of respect. The mentioned gatherings that would be there are totally different to the ones that have been there previously, different in style, and homes have been established there in close proximity for years, decades even, and residents have expressed concern for their well-being to them. Those concerns are real, Mr. Mayor, and therefore I believe the development, while appropriate for the town, it's not appropriate for the location. Thank you very much.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Bronwyn Petrie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any questions. I think our town planner has answered everything very well in
I agree.
our workshop.
I commend them on the work they've put
and
into it.
I appreciate all the detail we have been given. I'm very sympathetic to the neighbours in death can be very confronting to people. I am concerned and disappointed about some of the bullying and nasty personal comments that have been made. I want to assure people that I have had not one iota of pressure from the proponents. However, I have had pressure from the opponents. In making my decision, I have factored in existing developments in the vicinity of the hospital, Haddington and Millrace, and the associated traffic and noise, which seems to have been lost in the debate. I do agree with the town planner that the proposal has a far lesser impact than the current development consent, and that some objections are at odds with the reality of the immediately prior use of the site, and note that no complaints were lodged with council during the nearly 10 years of operation of that facility. Neighbours also adjacent to existing churches continue their normal activities, and I do not believe there's an expectation that neighbours should be impacted by any activity at on the odd occasion that something would happen if it were to go ahead as a funeral home. And we also note that there was a large concern about large funerals, a big concern, which we've been told would not be positioned there. With regards to traffic, we have numerous residences in town that are already situated next to churches, and others along the streets that have various funeral processions go by, and I do not believe their home values have been diminished by that. With regard to the petitions that say it should be out of town, we already have 2 in town. So that is the reality of the situation. It's not a first-timer. With regard to trees, one objection said that shielding trees would be too high. Others say they're not high enough. So, yeah, they're the things I have taken into consideration. And I would like to also foreshadow a proposed amendment to our LEP at the next council meeting that crematoriums be a prohibited development in RU5 dense residential areas. Thank you.
Noted, councillor. Thank you. Councillor Brian Murray.
Through you, Mr Mayor. This is merely a comment, and it's my personal view is that the median prices in the area of the proposed development will deteriorate if this development is approved, as I believe it is not in keeping with the residential nature of the surrounding area. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor.
Could I just make one more comment? I'd just like to remind the councillors here that we represent everybody in the electorate, not just our separate wards.
Totally agree, councillor.
Thank you.
Noted. Councillor Greg Sawyer.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I also commend our professional staff for providing a very full, thorough and detailed report for our consideration.
Totally agree,
in my
councillor.
2 years on the council, this particular subject has attracted the most interest in the gallery, the most correspondence via email and chats in the street. So it is a very, very emotive subject. As a councillor, I believe I have to go by the facts, not by the emotions. My major concern has been removed, the fact that there could be a crematorium there with given there.
Yep.
So that's out of it. The rest of the information has been professionally dealt with by our professional staff, and my major concern is if I do not support it and it's defeated, moving forward, it'll go to the Office of Environment and Planning and be upheld, and the ratepayers will pay the cost.
Good point.
Therefore, originally I was against, but through the whole process, on merit, I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you, councillor, for your comments. In fairness, councillors, and I respect and take on your comments, and I have been taking them and noting them in my scribe as I go, as for and against, and I've been fair there. There is 2 councillors who haven't commented. Did you wish to comment, Councillor Michael Petrie or Councillor McNish?
Well, my only comment is that Tenterfield needs something like this, needs a decent funeral home. Like all the funerals go over to Catholic Church, the residents over there don't whinge and carry on. It's something new. The town's got to have it, and it's going progress. It's not going backwards. I think it's an extra thing that's good for the town. And the people put the money into it to do the job. I think we should support them. That's
Thank you
my
for your
idea on
comments,
it.
councillor. Councillor McNish, yes.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks to Mo for a very good report. It made it very easy to make my decision.
Fully supported,
My
councillor.
only initial concern was the traffic. For 24 or 5 funerals a year, that's one every 2 weeks going up the highway. But then I thought about it later and I thought, well, probably 3/4 of those were either the Anglican Church or the Catholic Church. There's graveside services becoming more and more popular. So there might only be 1 or 2 a year actually leaving or utilising the facilities at the proposed funeral home. That was my main concern. A lot of the other concerns that people have seem to be emotive, and probably if I lived in George Street, I'd probably feel the same way. But hearing everything this morning, I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you, councillor. Councillors, I will wrap up the presentation to the report, and just with a quick summary. I do thank you all as a council for the effort and time you put into this and the comments that have been made. This council does listen to the community, and I fully respect each and individual councillor's opinion, and I'm pleased you've shared it with us today. Where we are today in the location of where this business operates now, we pass that without so much as a debate in Rouse Street, and it just amazes me that this has got so emotive with a development that's going to flourish and improve development in this town that that it just amuses me. The opposition I can refer to as the other funeral homes in this town are right here in High Street. It has never been a comment about it. It's been there for 100 years. It doesn't matter. And it sits right beside this northern car park. That interests me. There's never any comment about that. It's run in the appropriate way, as this will be. So I do commend you on your comment. I thank you, Tomei, and I thank you, Kylie, for the huge effort that you've gone in to present this report, and your comments are taken on board. And it's much appreciated that we have staff with the skill that present such a well-documented report to us as a council to make a decision, hopefully in the right way. Okay, councillors, the report's there in front of us to approve development application. All in favour? Councillors, it is a DA, and I will be recording your names, law. So for is Councillor Gary Very, Councillor Tom Peters, Councillor Bronwyn Petrie, Councillor Mike Petrie, Councillor John McNish, Councillor Greg Sawyer, Councillor Peter Petty. Against? Councillor Bob Rogan, Councillor Brian Murray, Councillor Don Forbes. I thank you all very much. Okay. Motion carried. Sorry. Councillors, I will, because we have right now a citizenship ceremony.
Through you, Mr Mayor.
Yes?
I was going to call for a division, but I obviously don't require a division.
No, you don't, because it's there, councillor.
I would now like to move a rescission motion on ENV 26/18.
Do I have a seconder? Go to the next meeting. Apologise, councillor. Noted. Councillor Don, yes? What? No, I apologise, doesn't need one. He's just noting that it goes to the next meeting. Okay? We'll make sure that everything's appropriate in Councillor Brian Murray wishing to do that it's in the right place. Okay, councillors, I will hold our meeting as we do. Okay, so can I have a motion to suspend standing orders? Councillor Brian Murray, second by Councillor Bob Rogan. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Yes. Rescission motion means that the motion will come back to council to be debated, but we'll be expecting more information on the negative part of it. That's right, because council don't meet in January, and Councillor Murray has every right to bring it forward.